Deanne has this silviculture key that Gareth had developed in an earlier project for them.
Okay, so I was tasked with creating so silviculture, right, is the applied knowledge in science and indigenous. It can be indigenous, it doesn't have to be scientific, but the applied knowledge of actively managing forest vegetation, right? So forestry and forest management is a very broad term. It could include everything from parks to protected areas to plantations and everything between. But silviculture specifically is about the knowledge and skills and technologies associated with managing forest vegetation. So the task was to create a silvicultural tool to help a forestry professional. Now remember, I didn't actually design this necessarily for the average woodlot owner. There's a lot of silvicultural terminology in that thing. To do two things. One was to manage forest vegetation, forest stands towards climate change adaptation and mitigation, right? Which is really about managing risk, like our excellent speaker spoke to this morning, right? Identifying trees and species and therefore patches on your woodlot that are high risk associated with the emerging climate, and trying to facilitate through active management, moving those stands towards being better adapted to the emerging climate that's coming. The second objective, and it is tricky to manage both, was also to try and manage towards climate change mitigation through carbon storage. So you can manage a forest with the objective of trying to store carbon, right? And, and in the temperate and northern climates, there's two ways to store carbon in a forest. One is in the growing stock, the actual trees. The other is in the soil. What we know about forest soils is that the older a forest gets and the more inputs there are of dead wood, the more carbon is stored in the soil, right? As opposed to tropical systems that have very, very rapid decomposition, right? There's almost no carbon in a tropical upland rainforest soil because of the intense nutrient cycling. In our forest types, if you leave this stand long enough, it'll start to build up carbon stores in the soil. So that's one of the principles in it, is like long rotation. And the other principle of storing carbon in the growing stock is growing trees for long periods of time. So the tool is designed to try and deliver on both those objectives. Because if you're only managing for climate change mitigation, you could do what the timber industry is doing right now, where they're actually getting more and more intensive in their management and growing trees on very short rotations. But if you grow trees on very short rotation, you're not storing any carbon in your growing stock or in the soil. I mean, if you harvest the timber and make it into a table, you're storing carbon in the table or in your house. But if you're trying to store carbon in the growing stock itself, you've got to grow stands on very long rotations, grow trees to old ages, and manage those stands over long periods of time. So for example, the carbon credit program for forest management requires people to have a plan to store carbon for at least 100 years. So the silvicultural tool you've got is designed to try and help a forestry professional. It's an aid to making decisions and to coming up with a prescription of how to manage the stand for two objectives. One is to maximize carbon storage. So you'll notice there is no clear-cut prescription in there, because short rotation clear cutting is the worst approach to storing carbon in forests. Again, if you're actually turning it into saw stock and you're sawing stuff out of it and making things out of wood, you can store carbon in the building, right? But in terms of storing carbon in the landscape, very, very short rotation forestry, short rotation timber management doesn't store a lot of carbon in the landscape. Most of the carbon is coming from sequestration of the trees growing. Anyway, you can get into the key. Again, I apologize, it's full of silvicultural terminology, right? The reality is that silviculture is a discipline. It's full of all kinds of technical words. Unfortunately, people use them sometimes correctly, sometimes incorrectly. I tried to be correct. Ted Needham told me I did a good job. All the terminology was bang on. He's a silviculture professor from UNB. But it is designed to do two things. It's designed to try and help somebody try to store carbon in the forest for long periods of time to mitigate climate change, right? Like the more forests we have in the world that are storing carbon, the more drawdown we're getting carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. So we can manage our forests for carbon storage and try to mitigate global warming through forest management. And then the second objective is to steer the composition primarily towards tree species that are better adapted to the emerging climate.
Gareth, do you want to run through? We'll use this as a potential area. Do you want to run through one of the?
If you want me to.
Get an idea. Most people probably understand keys, but just so that.
I'm on the, I guess, the pages are numbered. On the second page, so I'm in the first key, key 1. It talks about stand age structure. So it says, is the stand dominated by a single effective age? Yes or no? No, not anymore. Not because of the disturbance, right? Like we have a partial canopy that survived the disturbance event, and we have a new age group coming. So this might have been a single age stand before that disturbance, but we now have a stand that's more than one age. Follow me? So that would lead us to key 2. Or wait, key 3. I don't even know my tool properly. I'm using one. Key 3. Is the stand truly uneven age with at least 3 distinctive effective ages? So, well, here's the interesting thing, right? So in silviculture, we don't actually manage the biological age of trees. We manage their effective ages. So I would describe this as a 2-age structure. We've got the residual trees that survive the disturbance and a new one developing, despite the fact that that balsam fir tree might be 80 years old right now. Like, as a silviculturalist, you would treat this as a 2-age stand right now. In a truly uneven age stand, you would have multiple different ages, different heights and different canopy heights, right? Like in a truly uneven age stand. So the answer is no to that question. Is the canopy composition acceptable? In other words, adequately stocked to low risk species? Chris is shaking his head. He's saying no. Agree. I think I have a folder, I still have it on my drive, where there is at least 60 different rabbit holes I went down. We're trying to work through this towards outcomes. And part of what held me up was the assessment piece, because getting back to Deanna's, I think it was Deanna that spoke to this. Deanna spoke to this. It really does matter where you are. Like balsam fir is very high risk in southern New Brunswick. If you're at 500 meters in Green River in New Brunswick, right, it's probably not going to be a risk issue until like 2150. I'm just throwing numbers around, right? So whether balsam fir is a high risk species in terms of the emerging climate does depend on where you are. Like even 10 years ago in Stanley at 250 meters, I would have said no, balsam fir is not high risk. Now with that, and if anybody's wondering what woolly adelgid looks like, look at this fir right here. There's a balsam fir tree up there that's poking up above the canopy. See the defoliation just below the crown? That tree is infested with balsam woolly adelgid. And likely that's been in that tree for at least 10 years or more. Like it'll be there for long. It's a very, balsam woolly adelgid moves very, very slowly in the landscape. It has a very complex life cycle and it's not a very aggressive feeder. So if the biological controls, or in our case, the only control we have on balsam woolly adelgid at the moment is winter. If the winter doesn't keep the population on control, eventually the constant sucking, it has a sucking mouth part. Like it's not eating the leaves, it's sucking the sap out of the leaves and the young tissue. It'll cause the mortality of the foliage on the tree and eventually lead to the death of the tree. So that tree is going to die from that. So here's the question. Is the canopy composition acceptable, meaning adequately stocked to lower species? No, it says go to 3A, irregular shelterwood system, or irregular silvicultural systems, right? So to give you some jargon, right? In applied silviculture, uneven age management is about managing multiple ages of trees in a stand all at once. Very complicated, and it requires constant intervention. You're constantly cutting mature trees. You're constantly trying to regenerate new trees. You're constantly thinning immature trees. You're trying to manage all these different ages all at once, all the time. That's uneven age management. Irregular management is about taking stands to old ages and then very gradually regenerating them. And that very gradual regeneration produces an irregular stand structure. Okay? And if we think about, like that coastal forest is a good example, right? These old red spruce stands would become irregular as they got old. Trees would die. You get multiple ages, multiple canopy gaps, dead wood, irregular structure. And then you'd have a big windstorm come through, blow down the big trees, and then you get this irregular stand that was the legacy of the old stand before that. So what we know about forests in the Northeast is that pre-settlement, the predominant condition of a lot of our stands were irregular in their structure. Like we know that, right? Just a bit of interesting information. So we're on 3A, irregular siltwood. Okay, is the regeneration layer desirable? No, no. Okay, so we all agree to that. So I'm on the left. Is the stand mature and has reached the ideal time to regenerate the stand, and or there are no desirable crop trees to work with? So the stand isn't mature, right? Really, we've got an immature group of trees developing in the understory that buckthorn's taken advantage of, that new growing space. And we've got a canopy of trees that are really in decline. Like, I don't know if people noticed, but there's a whole bunch of white spruce in here that's just recently died. I'll go look at it, but it wouldn't surprise me if heat stress is causing the trees to be susceptible to bark beetle. So we'll go look at that tree on the way by, but I'm noticing very recent mortality in dominant white spruce trees here. It's probably summer heat stress. Like a really, really healthy, vigorous spruce tree can actually pitch out a bark beetle and survive survive an attack. But if they get really stressed, they won't be able to actually suppress the.
And that's a perfect example of how they talk. Dan mentioned about things multiplying. Yes. So the drought causes one thing, causes another, causes another. So.
But that tree that I thought was a larch, because it's died, so it looked exactly like that. So that tree died this year, or within the last couple of years.
And probably is a result of the drought.
Yep. So I would say, I don't know what people think. Although I don't think the stand is mature, I don't think there's much desirable growing stock to work with. Okay, so that would take us to the right? Are desirable growing stock crop trees suppressed and in decline? No. Well, maybe my key's not working.
What does it say to do?
Are desirable growing... Okay, let's hold it there for a second. I'm going to work rapidly. It's kind of like these things. When you get to a wrong place in one of these things, either it's wrong or you went the wrong way at some point.
The fork in the road.
Are the cedars any good to keep as a...
Oh, yes. I mean, certainly the cedar is long-lived. Yep. Just bear with me here a second. Okay, here's where I went wrong. Let's go right back to the beginning. Page 2. Key 1, is the stand dominated by a single effective age? It is. I'm sorry. It's now dominated by this new age group. So the point I'm making is, despite the fact that some of these canopy trees survived, what we've now got is why, and that's why the buckthorn is out of control here. So despite the fact that we've got a multi-age stand, right? Like, despite the fact that we've got more than one age group, we've now got a stand that's dominated by that new group that's coming. So the answer to question 1 in the entire key is actually yes. Single cohort dominated stands. This stand is dominated by this new age group that's coming. So I made a mistake right from the beginning. Go ahead.
We went back to the fir trees over there. With
Yes.
the fir trees come up. Is that the dominant?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So when we're thinking about age groups, we're talking about what's dominating the vegetative growth. So that last spot we're at, that was dominated by that new crop, that new growth. And even the first stop, yes, there's canopy trees that survive, but there's so much light there that aspen is, right? The dominant cohort is that new age group that's coming. So the answer is yes. Sorry. So I need to go to key 2, which is on page 3, right? Key 2, is the stand in the initiation stage? The answer is yes. So we've got a bunch of very new growth that's competing for light. Stem exclusion is what happens when the trees get big enough and dense enough that the canopy closes and they start competing for growing space and light. Right? Imagine the thicket that you walk through. Well, your example of the stand that could be partially thinned is a classic example of stem exclusion, right? So the answer is yes. Key 2A, stand initiation stages. Go to page 4. Am I in the right place? Is the stand on a non-forested site? No. Is the stand adequately stocked to low-risk species? No. Is the stand expected to become dominated by hardwoods as it reaches the stem exclusion stage? No. Full planting to low-risk species, site preparation if necessary.
Definition of lower species.
Lower species here would be sugar maple, oak, red maple. white pine, hemlock, cedar. Jury's out on cedar, right? Like cedar really does have like a hemiboreal distribution. Like it doesn't like heat. Like they've tried planting cedar, for example, in southern New York State, and it just dies in the heat. Like,
Is there any worry about hemlock in HWA or?
well, not in New Brunswick yet, but it's only a matter of time. It's coming up from the south too, right? Yeah. It's Vince, right? Vincent. So Vincent and I were talking about an interesting idea that he had. Everybody hear me? So Vincent's idea, which I think is a cool idea, is rather than going to full planting here, like actually planting scattered trees in the buckthorn, and then either relying on the shade tolerance of them in the case of sugar maple, or intensively managing the crowns around those. Like let's say you planted oak in a thicket like that. You could protect it and then manage it until it get up above the buckthorn, and then it would actually outgrow the buckthorn in terms of height. I think that's a really cool idea. And that would certainly be a cheaper option here than full planting. Because if you planted this, the cost, as Mackenzie has already spoken to, and the vegetation management to the buckthorn is very, 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 very high. Especially without herbicides. And again, I'm not saying, I mean, herbicide is a tool, it's very effective. I don't use it on my woodlot per se, but.
Or if you have a big bunch of buckthorn like that, you'd be tempted to.
Sure. Well, I'm not about to suggest it's wrong. Some people think it's wrong, but
If it's more like the cost of it would have to be mitigated with the loss of damages from it.
that's right.
So I think that's what
But getting to Mackenzie's example of a trial here, I think what I would do is both. I would try what they're thinking of doing a very high density full planting, but I'd also go the low density route. Because really all you need is a few oak trees or a few maple trees to get up above that buckthorn. They're going to canopy out and outgrow the buckthorn, right? So on my woodlot, because I'm cheap, I'd probably try what Vincent's talking about. Yeah. So I'm sorry I screwed it up. But we went the right way in the end. So actually we ended up where Mackenzie is, planting.